And now onto your forecast methods. So you can see we have 4 different types of forecast layouts, broken up into single component versus historical then forecast, and variable drivers versus non-variable drivers. Now looking firstly at single component versus historical then forecast. On a single component model, the sheets in which you're entering your forecasts only display forecast periods within the model. Whereas with the historical then forecast model, we display a certain number of historical periods alongside your forecast periods to help inform your decision making when populating forecasts. Jumping into an example, this is a single component model. You can see our forecasts begin in July 22 in the time series at the top, and we're only displaying the forecast periods. I can see the previous month's numbers being pulled through. However, this is all the historical information that will be displayed, and the rest is simply populating forecast assumptions. Whereas if we look at a historical then forecast model, you can see that our forecasts also begin in July 22. However, we're currently displaying 3 periods of historical information running from April 22 to June 22. The number of historical periods is driven by this drop-down box at the top of the sheet, and if I expand this to say 6 months, you'll see that our time series infrastructure will update, and it's now displaying 6 months of historical information alongside our forecasts. The historical information can help when populating forecasts, as we can look back and analyse trends. For example, our revenue here has been increasing by 5 each period, so when I populate my forecast, I might perpetuate that trend and increase by 5 each period moving forward as well. So a historical then forecast structure displays historical information alongside your forecast to help inform your forecast assumption entry, whereas a single entity model simply displays your forecast periods only. Then we have variable drivers and non-variable drivers models. Variable drivers allows each category of information to have its own unique driver within a section of analysis, whereas a non-variable drivers model has consistent drivers for each area of analysis that can be changed out. In a non-variable drivers model, when you first open this up, your default driver will be amounts. Our 3 revenue categories all have the same amounts driver. If I wanted to change the way that I forecast my revenue analysis here, then if I change the driver of this revenue analysis and change this to unit prices and volumes, once I change this, you'll see that all 3 revenue categories now take unit prices and volumes assumptions. That is, all 3 categories have this same consistent forecast driver, and if I change one, it changes the entire area too. You see that all 3 revenue categories now take unit prices and volumes assumptions to drive the forecasts. Then looking at a variable drivers model, when you first open a variable drivers model, your default driver will be year-on-year growth rates. Variable drivers allows us to easily change the forecast driver for each individual category. For example, if I wanted to change the driver of my first revenue category here, you'll note that it is currently set to year-on-year growth rates. If I change the driver and again choose unit prices and volumes, once I change the driver, this will only change the infrastructure for our first revenue category. And you'll see that our first revenue category now takes unit prices and volumes assumptions, while our second and third categories are still set to year-on-year growth rates. They all have their own independent drivers and can be switched out very easily. So these are your 4 different forecast methods available to you, with single component models only displaying forecast periods on forecast sheets, while historical then forecast shows a certain section of historical periods alongside your forecast to help inform your assumption entry when populating your forecasts. Then with variable drivers allowing you to change the individual driver for each line item within the model, whereas non-variable drivers models have consistent drivers for each section of analysis.